5 times say my name, and a sweet reward you shall claim.
Candyman. 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 Oh my god. Licorice!
Candyman came out in 1992. It's a classic horror film that everyone knows the name of, but not very many people have talked about in quite some time. At least not until the announcement that Jordan Peele is giving it the Halloween treatment, making a follow-up to the original, ignoring all other sequels. And being a man behind a couple horror hits, the series is in good hands. It was directed by Bernard Rose, who did other stuff, and the film is based on a short story, The Forbidden, written by horror master Clive Barker. Today's feast of frightening filmmaking is a special little masterpiece. Yes, it has its fair share of blood and gore, but it also dips its toe into the sociological commentary of both race and class, which maintains the film's relevancy, especially in today's current events. Yeah, we're going deep in this evening. Firstly, if you haven't seen the film or it's been a while, here's a recap. And of course, this is your one and only warning for spoilers. Let's begin. The film displays its love for bird's eye view shots and 80s synth-inspired organ and choir music, clearly to add to the dramatic weight of the story. The story follows university graduate student Helen Lyle, played by Virginia Madsen. She and her partner Bernadette, played by Cassie Lemons, are working on a thesis about the urban myths within the ghetto community of Cabrini Green. One particular myth of interest is the Candyman, played by Tony Todd. The myth is that if you say his name 5 times in a mirror, you'll summon his presence and be met with his hook hand to your bloody demise. The residents of this community have linked 25 recent murders to his myth. This leads Helen to the hypothesis that the residents of Cabrini Green use the Candyman legend as a coping mechanism for their hardships. This setup already gives the film some heavy subject material. And then it cranks it up to 11. Candyman's backstory. Back in 1890, he was the son of a slave. He became wealthy off an invention that mass-produced shoes, and later became a revered artist painting portraits of wealthy landowners. When he's hired to paint a particular landowner's daughter, he fell in love and got her pregnant. The response was a complex lynching of especially inhumane magnitude. They sawed off his arm, bathed him in honey, and let the bees sting him to death and set his body aflame on a pyre. A rather specific course of tortures, if I do say so myself, but horrific nonetheless. It's like you had the worst day of your life. Your girlfriend left you, you lost your job, someone stole your identity, and then you hear that whistle of a bomb slowly dropping above. As for the name Candyman, we never see any candy in the film except for one example of chocolates wrapped with razor blades. Oh boy, Halloween came early this year! Supposedly, a child at his murder had mentioned how the honey he was covered in tasted like candy, and so the mob rioted the nickname Candyman over and over. Either way, I'm not sure how the hook and mirror thing comes into play from the nature of his death. I mean, I guess you could just chalk it up to it being similar to the whole Bloody Mary myth, or even like Beetlejuice having to summon his name 3 times in order to summon him. It's paranormal. Anything goes, right? Of course, Helen and Bernadette attempt saying his name 5 times in the mirror, and nothing happens immediately. They do go to investigate the dilapidated buildings where the latest victim died. The place represents a community that's poorly off, intimidating, and yet looks out for each other.
Hands up, people! 5-0 coming out the back door! Police!
Helen takes photos of the apartment where the murder took place. The most notable detail among the graffiti is the face of the Candyman entering his world via his mouth. Attach whatever meaning you want, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies. It's then she meets Anna Marie, played by Vanessa Estelle Williams. She represents the downtrodden mother trying to make ends meet to take care of her baby. She even looks at Helen suspiciously, assuming she's making a study that furthers the prejudice towards poor black people.
What you gonna say? That we bad? We steal? We gang bang? We all on drugs, eh?
She comes back the next day to search the place more, only to be met by a kid named Jake, played by Tawan Guy. He shows her a bathroom area where a boy his age was killed by the Candyman not too long ago. She gets her first evidence of supernatural happenings with a toilet full of bees.
Not the bees! Ah!
and is surrounded by gang members, the leader posing as the Candyman. She's assaulted, but later picks the guy out in a police lineup. She still feels sad over the unfair justice between races.
2 people get brutally murdered and the cops do nothing. Whereas a white woman goes in there and gets attacked and they lock the place down.
Yeah, I know.
Shortly after, she meets the true Candyman face to face in a parking garage, clearly under some sort of trance. She blacks out, only to wake in Anne-Marie's apartment covered in blood. She finds the dog dead and Anne-Marie hysterically accusing her of killing her baby. The police arrest her and think she hid the child somewhere, confirming there is no conclusion if the child is alive or not. Her husband Trevor, played by Xander Berkeley, makes her bail. Surprisingly, considering the film implies he's having an affair with one of his students. When Bernadette comes to check in on her, the Candyman attacks them both, again leaving it to look like Helen committed the murder. She's sent to the psych ward where the Candyman harasses her some more.
If you would learn just a little from me, you would not beg to live.
What do you want, a kiss?
Just one exquisite kiss.
When she's being assessed to see if she can appear in court, she tries to prove the Candyman is real by saying his name in the mirror. And he makes a grand entrance, followed by a whimsical exit. She flees from the hospital to her home to confirm Trevor was indeed cheating on her. She can't bring herself to lay harm on them and instead tries to confront the Candyman at the apartment in Cabrini Green. He tells her he can offer her immortality in exchange for the baby's life. Up to this point, it's unclear why he gives her special treatment compared to his other victims. A mural of his history displays his lady love, who strongly resembles Helen. Whether this means that she looks like his old lady love, or that she's literally a reincarnation of his old love, isn't clearly stated, but it certainly explains this hellish booty call. He makes her retrieve the baby on top of a pile of refuge, meant to be a bonfire. When the residents see her climbing with Candyman's hook, they light up the party. Candyman urges her to give in to his immolation of her, which appears to be his attempt at the family he never had, while also instilling the power that he possesses into her, a power of reputation and fear, which was earned through no one coming to his aid when he died and burned away, and molding a similar shape for her as well. She refuses him, saving the baby and leaving him to burn away. Whether he's dead or gone, with 2 sequels, I doubt it. She gives the baby back to Anne-Marie, burning to death in the process. At her funeral, Trevor, her colleagues, and the Cabrini Green residents come to pay their respects. Jake even leaves her corpse with a hook, giving her that legendary status the Candyman once had. Trevor, like the numbnut he is, actually misses his wife now that she's gone, and even tries summoning her in the mirror, somehow thinking that would work. And he learns too late to be careful what you wish for. Wow. Now there's a horror picture that proves being scary doesn't come from cheap jump scares and gore. Although it does that as well. But it's the story itself and the uncomfortable subject matter that leaves that chill in our spine. Real life proves to be the source of our greatest horror. But with that said, let's take a look at the most terrifying scenes. Here's the breakdown. What makes him creepy is his characterizations. He floats. His voice is deep, charismatic, and echoey like he's beyond our world.
Be my victim.
And his ghostly powers are based in reputation, how much he's talked about as an urban myth, like Freddy Krueger, maintaining his power through being remembered. Yes, he describes,
I am rumor. It is a blessed condition, believe me, to be whispered about at street corners, to live in other people's dreams, but not to have to be.
Like some kind of nega MLK Jr. I do have to question his motivation. Being a victim of racial hate, most of his victims are also African American. You could theorize he's just this angry, uncontrollable swirl of undead emotion, just like The Grudge, but then he also has feelings for Helen. It's true we never know anything about Candyman when he was alive, if he was a good person or not, because in death he seems to revel in his power to live through fear among the community. And he wants to share that power with the woman he lost years ago. Whether Helen really is her, literally or not. Funny enough, in the short story, Candyman was not implied to be a man, but more of an entity. He wasn't even black. He was described as being light-skinned enough to be yellow like he had jaundice. Perhaps that can help us understand him here. Perhaps he is in fact a fully realized boogeyman and less of a vengeful spirit, which makes him all the more mysterious as to what he is and what he is all about. At this point, I think the idea of systematic racism has been made clear. The characters even talk about a lot of buildings from Cabrini Green were restructured for wealthier, whiter folks who would live in them, pushing away the poor minority community. What strikes at the nerves more than any gore or jump scare is the discomfort you feel in an unjust world that's very much based in reality. You can't search the news these days without hearing about some kind of injustice in America, whether it be classist or racist. Yes, the fact that issues presented in a 28-year-old film are still shockingly relevant today is what makes this film so gosh darn scary. The film takes this a step further through Candyman. This apparition became the embodiment of everything he was accused of, not just because he was tortured and killed, but because no one would help him in his time of need. He was created by society. The transformation he imposes on her throughout the film is horrifying, but does seem to encompass a similar experience he went through. The fact too that the original story was based in London, not Chicago, I think also extends the message that this is an issue that transcends time and location. Graffiti, dilapidated housing, the ghetto. This is a perfect place for real-life horror. I mean, you got homeless, drug addicts, hidden criminals, desperate people. I mean, why hasn't this been a more common setting in other films? Instead of the typical big, quiet, middle-class home, like a forest you can get lost in full of spirits or animals, a poor, despaired city neighborhood often has its horror stories appear on the news. So why not in horror films? I rarely see this and think it's an opportunity to tap into. Even David Lynch used old industrial-looking sites to convey horror in his film Eraserhead. The potential is boundless. We talked about Helen's transformation, reminiscent of Kafka's Metamorphosis, where Gregor was turned into a giant cockroach. Hear me out. To be stripped away who you are and to be made into a monster against your will is a terrifying existence. And to be accused of crimes you did not commit is not only infuriating, it is a phenomenon that can feel unwinnable. Another of Kafka's works, The Trial, has a similar story of an innocent man being tried as a murderer in a broken system and a broken society. Similar in this film, the true nightmare then becomes you being molded into something that makes those accusations eventually come true. I just wanted to give a special mention for the final scene of the film. What better payoff than to see a tortured character make a comeback in gory delight. The makeup, the burns, the eyes, the blue strobe lighting. It makes for a fantastic fever dream I'm sure none of you would appreciate to find in your bathroom late at night. I'm typically a firm believer of what you would call the Hitchcock method, who never really revealed any gore, only implied through clever and well-planned camera angles and carefully building suspense. Sometimes, however, a quick shot of shock value helps sell a point, rather it be the revolting nature of a death and the hate behind it, or a flash of brutal death to capture the magnitude of a scene. Candyman used this imagery more often to its strength than not, but I admit the movie lingered on these shots too long at times, which can make a scene more gross than terrifying, or worse, silly looking. Ah, look at that goofy face. I hope you guys enjoyed this evening's episode. I know it was a tad on the heavy side, but next week we're going to go back to some spooky delights. If the final scene of this movie showed us anything, it's do not screw with women. Boy, is that going to be a fun topic for next week. So until then, take care and pleasant dreams.